Let's figure out what really matters when it comes to drafting a quarterback. And maybe how my damn Dallas Cowboys can become a little less predictable. Maybe even become a Super Bowl contender if they can become a little more unpredictable. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Let's talk to Sharp, footballanalytics.com, and ESPN contributor Warren Sharp, who's now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. What's up, Warren?
Hey, Will, how are you doing?
I'm good. So tell me this, first of all. We spent the weekend measuring quarterbacks, everything, their 40, their height, their everything. How much of this do you think really matters in or should matter in picking a quarterback?
I think you just can't be at the extreme bottom performing indicator of any of those metrics. I think as long as you have a minimum height, and I think that the minimum height is way less than what a lot of NFL, probably people, NFL minds that are drafting these guys actually think it could be. You know, we've seen Russell Wilson, we've seen Drew Brees, and so why can't we see Kyler Murray? You know, we don't need to have the gigantic, gargantuan quarterbacks that John Elway seems infatuated with, who he thinks can just slam dunk the ball over the line of scrimmage for easy completions, because that just doesn't happen. The guys that are really tall in the league are guys that typically have been given every single chance and opportunity afforded to them throughout their development because they're so tall. And so they're these prototypical guys that get excuses made for them. And we can teach them to be accurate and we can teach them to be more consistent, but they've got the height. And the reality is the guys that are the shorter side, they're the ones that scratch and claw and fight their way through everything to get very few second chances. And these are the guys that I would rather have. So in terms of pure measurables, it's not even really, you got to have some minimum level of weight. You got to have some minimum level of height. Other than that, I don't really know that it's like any specific measurables that I care about. I care about a lot of things that Mike Leach was talking about at Sloan Conference last weekend, which is accuracy, which is very hard to teach. You're either accurate or you're not. He wants a quarterback that's intelligent and can make good decisions, has the intelligence that he can teach what to audible to at the line of scrimmage, because that's very important in the NFL. Someone with quick feet, someone who could be fast, doesn't have to be fast, but obviously being slow is bad, and a guy with a strong arm. Now, it doesn't have to be the strongest out there, but right. You have to be able to complete passes, within 30 yards of the line of scrimmage.
What do you think that minimum is on height, though? Because that's one of the points people make when it comes to Kyler, that he's actually pushing that minimum.
I think he's at the borderline. I agree. I mean, he's close to it, but he is able to still make all the throws that are required. And even guys that have come out like Baker Mayfield have indicated that, when he's dropping back to pass, he can't see the exact over the guys, the line of scrimmage, over the offensive linemen that are standing in front of him. But what he's looking for is he's looking for the windows that have to be where you're going to be throwing the ball, where the guy's going to be running into, because you can't stand there and throw the ball directly to a guy who's standing right in front of you. You have to throw, generally speaking, in the NFL with anticipation to throw that guy open or throw into a window where that guy's going to be. And so being able to see that receiver is not as important as it is just to be able to know intelligently and have the accuracy to put the ball where it needs to be, and that's where that receiver is going to end up.
Talking to Warren Sharp here on the Will Cain Show. You brought up Mike Leach and Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. You spoke at it. Mike Leach was there. Here's a quick question on that. Why do you think Mike Leach hasn't gotten more attention from the NFL? I mean, a lot of these guys that are getting the attention, like Cliff Kingsbury, getting jobs for that matter, learned, if not at the feet, within the system that Mike Leach really popularized. Why not a chance for Mike Leach?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually was fortunate, had about 15 minutes of one-on-one time to talk to him about a lot of different things. And he mentioned a lot about many of the things that the New England Patriots are doing that he feels like they've taken from some of the stuff that he was doing a long time ago. So he knows that his stuff is filtering into the NFL and it's being used by teams that are some of the best teams around the league. But I didn't actually talk to him about giving him why haven't they given him that opportunity? It's a very good question. Obviously, a lot of his philosophies have made its way there, but he has not himself.
Right. It seems like sooner or later you'd go to the fountainhead, right? Instead of everything downstream, you might as well go to where it originates. Warren Sharp here on the Will Cain Show. So I'm going to do this, Warren. You can correct me any missteps I make, but I don't want to take for granted. I mean, I think we have a very smart audience. And I think in general, by the way, I think sports audiences are getting smarter and smarter about this stuff. But Cerruti was telling me, my producer Cerruti was saying, you're a guy that I read who is, when I read on Twitter and during the NFL season, is constantly like, don't run the ball so much. Don't run in first down situations. Don't be predictable about it. And I don't mean to miscast any of your opinions, but it's largely been less run, more pass. I think that's fair as a generalization, or at least not running in such obvious situations. But you told Cerruti that you feel like teams ought to go less 3 wide receivers and go more 12 personnel. That's 1 tight end, 2 receivers, which is a little bit against this cutting edge mentality we have with the Rams, I think, and the Chiefs, where it's get as many weapons on the field as you can. So why go back to more 12 in your mind?
Right. So 11 personnel, that's what all the teams are using. They upped the last 2 years before 2017. Teams were throwing the ball about 69% of the time out of 11 personnel. That's 1 running back, 1 tight end,
right,
3 wide receivers. And what they tried to do in 2018 is we said, hey, let's throw the ball more. And teams were throwing the football more. We had more first down passing than we've ever had in the NFL history. Those passes were having a higher completion percentage. It's 7.6, better than any other time, higher yards per attempt. So we were getting more passing. But what was happening is coaches were just sending out those 3 wide receivers. And instead of throwing the ball from more creative personnel groupings, we were going to up from 69% the 2 prior years up to 73% of all passes were coming from 11 personnel. But guess what? Passes from 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, pull off that 3rd wide receiver, add an extra tight end. You've got 2 tight ends out on the field now. Those passes from 12 personnel were better across the board, and they've been better for the last 3 years, almost at any different metric that you're going to look at. They have a higher success rate. They average 1.0 more yards per attempt, despite a near similar air yards. It means how far your depth of target is. Depth of target about the same, but these passes are averaging more yards per attempt. They have a higher touchdown rate, a lower interception rate, and a lower sack rate. Having that extra tight end out on the field allows you to be very multiple. It looks to the defense like you might be running the ball because you've got extra blockers, but you can keep them both in as pass blockers and take deep shots down the field like the Rams used to target Brandon Cooks in the Super Bowl on that one big pass play that he dropped because McCourty was able to knock it away, but that was almost their only touchdown of the game. That was from 2 tight ends, both stayed in the block. You can also send these guys out on routes as receivers, both of them, one of them. You just have a lot of ability to be very multiple when you have those extra tight ends on the field from a blocking perspective, and these passes are more efficient. And we've got a great tight end class this season, and I really hope that teams in 2019 throw more from 12 personnel with that extra tight end, and also target tight ends more. Tight ends are the best target you can pass the ball to if you're looking at overall averages of success rate in the league. They have a high success rate.
So I misspoke. 12 is one running back, 2 tight ends. And what you're telling us is more 12, less 11. So in other words, more tight ends on the field, invest in tight ends, and the end result is this draft, you're telling us, is a good one to go in that direction. Good tight ends this
Absolutely.
year.
Yep, very good tight end class this season.
All right, sharpfootballanalytics.com, and it's ESPN contributor Warren Sharp. Thanks a lot, Warren.
Thanks for having me, Will.
You bet.